Chapter 13. At home again on the mountain. At daylight, Mr. Sayserman went quickly upstairs and along the passage to Miss Rottermeier's room, and there gave such an unusually loud knock at the door that the lady awoke from sleep with the cry of alarm. She heard the master of the house calling to her from the other side of the door. "Please make haste and come down to the dining room. We must make ready for a journey at once." When Miss Rottermeier came down with everything well adjusted about her except her cap, which was put on hindside before, Mr. Sayserman began without delay to give her directions. She was to get out a trunk and pack up all the things belonging to Heidi and a good part of Clara's clothes as well, so that the child might take home proper apparel. Miss Rottermeier stood as if rooted to the spot, and stared in astonishment at Mr. Sayserman. She had quite expected a long private account of some terrible ghostly experience of his during the night. But Mr. Sayserman had no thought or time for explanations, and left her standing there while he went to speak to Clara. He told her everything that had occurred during the past night, and explained how Heidi's nightly wanderings might gradually lead her farther and farther, perhaps even on to the roof, which of course would be very dangerous for her. And so they had decided to send her home at once, as he did not like to take the responsibility of her remaining, and Clara would see for herself that it was the only thing to do. Clara was very much distressed, and at first made all kinds of suggestions for keeping Heidi with her, but her father was firm, and promised her if she would be reasonable and make no further fuss, that he would take her to Switzerland next summer. Next he sent for Sebastian and told him to make ready to start. He was to travel with Heidi as far as Basel that day, and the next day take her home. He would give him a letter to carry to the grandfather, which would explain everything, and he could then return to Frankfurt. "But there is one thing in particular which I wish you to look after," said Mr. Sayserman in conclusion. "When you reach the hotel, go at once into the child's room and see that the windows are all firmly fastened so that they cannot be easily opened. After Heidi is in bed, lock the door of her room on the outside, for the child walks in her sleep and might run into danger in a strange house if she went wandering downstairs and tried to open the front door. So you understand." "Oh, then that was it," exclaimed Sebastian, for now a light was thrown on the ghostly visitations. "Yes, that was it, and you are a coward, and you may tell John he is the same, and the whole household a pack of idiots." And with this Mr. Sayserman went off to his study to write a letter to our uncle. Chapter 13. At home again on the mountain. At daylight, Mr. Sayserman went quickly upstairs and along the passage to Miss Rottermeier's room, and there gave such an unusually loud knock at the door that the lady awoke from sleep with the cry of alarm. She heard the master of the house calling to her from the other side of the door. "Please make haste and come down to the dining room. We must make ready for a journey at once." When Miss Rottermeier came down with everything well adjusted about her except her cap, which was put on hindside before, Mr. Sayserman began without delay to give her directions. She was to get out a trunk and pack up all the things belonging to Heidi and a good part of Clara's clothes as well, so that the child might take home proper apparel. Miss Rottermeier stood as if rooted to the spot, and stared in astonishment at Mr. Sayserman. She had quite expected, but Heidi could not swallow a morsel, though she tried to do what she was told. She was in such a state of excitement that she hardly knew if she was awake or dreaming, or if she would again open her eyes to find herself in her nightgown at the front door. "Tell Sebastian to take plenty of provisions with him," Mr. Sayserman called out to Miss Rottermeier, who just then came into the room. "The child can't eat anything now, which is quite natural. Now run up to Clara and stay with her till the carriage comes around," he added kindly, turning to Heidi. Heidi had been longing for this and ran quickly upstairs. An immense trunk was standing open in the middle of the room. "Oh, Heidi," cried Clara as she entered, "see all the things I have had put in for you. Aren't you pleased?" And she ran over a list of things, dresses and aprons and handkerchiefs and all kinds of working materials. "And look here," she added, as she triumphantly held up a basket. Heidi peeped in and jumped for joy, for inside it were 12 beautiful round white rolls, all for grandmother. In their delight, the children forgot that the time had come for them to separate, and when someone called out, "The carriage is here," there was no time for grieving. Heidi ran to her room to fetch her darling book. She knew no one could have packed that, as it lay under her pillow, for she had kept it by her night and day. This was put in the basket with the rolls. Then she opened her wardrobe to look for another treasure, the old red shawl which had been left behind. Heidi wrapped it round her old hat and laid it on the top of the basket, so that the red package was quite conspicuous. Then she put on her pretty hat and left the room. Miss Rottermeier was waiting at the top of the stairs to say goodbye to her. When she caught sight of the strange little red bundle, she took it out of the basket and threw it on the ground. "No, no, Adelaide, you cannot leave the house with that thing. What can you possibly want with it?" Heidi did not dare take up her little bundle, but she gave the master of the house an imploring look, as if her greatest treasure had been taken from her. "No, no," said Mr. Sesamon in a very decided voice. "The child shall take home with her whatever she likes, kittens and tortoises if it pleases her. We need not put ourselves out about that, Miss Rottermeier." Heidi quickly picked up her bundle with a look of joy and gratitude. As she stood by the carriage door, Mr. Sesamon gave her his hand and said he hoped she would remember him and Clara. He wished her a happy journey, and Heidi thanked him for all his kindness, and added, "And please say goodbye to the doctor for me, and give him many, many thanks." For she had not forgotten that he had said to her the night before, "It will be all right tomorrow," and she rightly divined that he had helped to make it so for her. Heidi was now lifted into the carriage, and then the basket and the provisions were put in, and finally Sebastian took his place. Then Mr. Sesamon called out once more, "A pleasant journey to you," and the carriage rolled away. Heidi was soon sitting in the railway carriage, holding her basket tightly on her lap. She would not let it out of her hands for a moment, for it contained the delicious rolls for grandmother, so she must keep it carefully, and even peep inside it from time to time to enjoy the sight of them. For many hours she sat as still as a mouse. Only now was she beginning to realize that she was going home to the grandfather, the mountain, the grandmother, and Peter. All of a sudden she said, anxiously, "Sebastian, are you sure that grandmother on the mountain is not dead?" "No, no," said Sebastian, wishing to soothe her. "We will hope not. She is sure to be alive still." Then Heidi fell back on her own thoughts again. Now and then she looked inside the basket, for the thing she looked forward to most was laying all the rolls out on grandmother's table. After a long silence she spoke again. "If only we could know for certain that grandmother is alive." "Yes, yes," said Sebastian, half asleep. "She is sure to be alive. There is no reason why she should be dead." After a while, sleep came to Heidi too, and after her disturbed night and early rising, she slept so soundly that she did not wake till Sebastian shook her by the arm and called to her, wake up, we shall have to get out directly. We are just in Basel." There was a further railway journey of many hours the next day. Heidi again sat with her basket on her knee, for she would not have given it up to Sebastian on any consideration. Today she never even opened her mouth, for her excitement, which increased with every mile of the journey, kept her speechless. All of a sudden, before Heidi expected it, a voice called out, "Mayenfeld!" She and Sebastian both jumped up, the latter also taken by surprise. In another minute they were both standing on the platform with Heidi's trunk, and the train was steaming away down the valley. Sebastian looked after it regretfully, for he preferred the easier mode of travelling to a wearisome climb on foot, especially as there was danger, no doubt, as well as fatigue in a country like this, where, according to Sebastian's idea, everything and everybody were half savage. He therefore looked cautiously to either side to see who was a likely person to ask the safest way to Durfley. Just outside the station, he saw a shabby-looking little cart and horse which a broad-shouldered man was loading with heavy sacks that had been brought by the train. So he went up to him and asked which was the safest way to get to Durfley. "All the roads about here are safe," was the curt reply. So Sebastian altered his question and asked which was the best way to avoid falling over the precipice, and also how a trunk could be conveyed to Durfley. The man looked at it, weighing it with his eye, and then volunteered, if it was not too heavy, to take it on his own cart, as he was driving to Durfley. After some little interchange of words, it was finally agreed that the man should take both the child and the trunk to Durfley, and there find someone who could be sent on with Heidi up the mountain. "I can go by myself. I know the way well from Durfley," put in Heidi, who had been listening attentively to the conversation. Sebastian was greatly relieved at not having to do any mountain climbing. He drew Heidi aside and gave her a thick rolled parcel and a letter for her grandfather. The parcel, he told her, was a present from Mr. Sesemann, and she must put it at the bottom of her basket under the rolls and be very careful not to lose it, as Mr. Sesemann would be very vexed if she did. "I shall be sure not to lose it," Heidi confidently said, and she at once put the roll and the letter at the bottom of her basket. The trunk, meanwhile, had been hoisted into the cart, and now Sebastian lifted Heidi and her basket onto the high seat, and shook hands with her. The driver swung himself up beside Heidi, and the cart rolled away in the direction of the mountains, while Sebastian, glad of having no tiring and dangerous journey on foot before him, sat down in the station and awaited the return train. The driver of the cart was the miller at Durfley, and was taking home his sacks of flour. He had never seen Heidi, but like everybody in Durfley, knew all about her. He had known her parents, and felt sure at once that this was the child of whom he had heard so much. He began to wonder why she had come back, and as they drove along, he entered into conversation with her. "You are the child who lived with your grandfather, uncle, are you not?" "Yes." "Didn't they treat you well down there that you have come back so soon?" "Yes, it was not that. Everything in Frankfurt is as nice as it could be." "Then why are you running home again?" "Only because Mr. Sesemann gave me leave, or else I should not have come." "If they were willing to let you stay, why did you not remain where you were better off than at home?" "Because I would 1,000 times rather be with grandfather on the mountain than anywhere else in the world." "You will think differently, perhaps, when you get back there," grumbled the miller, and then to himself, "It's strange of her, for she must know what it's like." He began whistling and said no more, while Heidi looked around her and began to tremble with excitement, for she knew every tree along the way, and there overhead were the high jagged peaks of the mountain looking down on her like old friends. She nodded back to them and grew every moment more wild with her joy and longing, feeling as if she must jump down from the cart and run with all her might till she reached the top. The clock was striking 5 as they drove into Durfley. As the miller lifted Heidi down, she said hastily, "Thank you, grandfather will send for the trunk." She climbed up the steep path from Durfley as quickly as she could. She was obliged, however, to pause now and again to take breath, for the basket she carried was rather heavy, and the way got steeper as she drew nearer the top. One thought alone filled Heidi's mind. Would she find the grandmother sitting in her usual corner by the spinning wheel? Was she still alive? At last, Heidi caught sight of the grandmother's house in the hollow of the mountain, and her heart began to beat. She ran faster and faster, and her heart beat louder and louder. And now she had reached the house, but she trembled so she could hardly open the door. And then she was standing inside, unable in her breathlessness to utter a sound. "Oh my God!" cried a voice from the corner. "That was how Heidi used to run in. If only I could have her with me once again. Who is there?" "It's I, grandmother," cried Heidi, as she ran and flung herself on her knees beside the old woman, and seizing her hands clung to her, unable to speak for joy. And the grandmother herself could not say a word for some time, so unexpected was this happiness. But at last she put out her hand and stroked Heidi's curly hair and said, "Yes, yes, that is her hair, and her voice. Thank God that He has granted my prayer." And tears of joy fell from the blind eyes onto Heidi's hand. "Is it really you, Heidi? Have you really come back to me?" "Yes, grandmother, I am really here," answered Heidi in a reassuring voice. "Do not cry, for I have really come back, and I am never going away again, and I shall come every day to see you, and you won't have any more hard bread to eat for some days. For look, look!" And Heidi took the rolls from the basket and piled the whole 12 up on grandmother's lap. "Ah, child, child, what a blessing you bring with you!" the old woman exclaimed, as she felt and seemed never to come to the end of the rolls. "But you yourself are the greatest blessing." Heidi stood up, and Brigitte could not say enough in her admiration of the child's dress and appearance. She walked around her, exclaiming all the while, "Grandmother, if you could only see her, and see what a pretty frock she has on, you would hardly know her again. And the hat with the feather in it is yours too, I suppose? Put it on that I may see how you look in it." "No, I would rather not," replied Heidi firmly. "You can have it if you like. I do not want it. I have my own still." And Heidi, so saying, undid her red bundle and took out her own hat, which had become a little more battered still during the journey. She had not forgotten how her grandfather had called out to Dete that he never wished to see her and her hat and feathers again, and this was the reason she had so anxiously preserved her old hat, for she had never ceased to think about going home to her grandfather. Next she took off her pretty dress and put her red shawl on over her under petticoat, which left her arms bare. "I must go home to grandfather now," she said, "but tomorrow I shall come again. Good night, grandmother." "Yes, come again. Be sure you come again tomorrow," begged the grandmother as she pressed Heidi's hands in hers, unwilling to let her go. "Why have you taken off that pretty dress?" asked Brigitte. "Because I would rather go home to grandfather as I am, or else perhaps he would not know me. You hardly did at first." Brigitte went with her to the door, and there said in rather a mysterious voice, "You must be careful, for Peter tells me that uncle is always now in a bad temper and never speaks." Heidi bid her good night and continued her way up the mountain, her basket on her arm. Soon she caught sight of the tops of the fir trees above the hut roof, then the roof itself, and at last the whole hut. And there was grandfather, sitting as in old days, smoking his pipe, and she could see the fir trees waving in the wind. Quicker and quicker went her little feet, and before uncle had time to see who was coming, Heidi had rushed up to him, thrown down her basket, and flung her arms round his neck, unable in the excitement of seeing him again to say more than "Grandfather, grandfather, grandfather," over and over again. And the old man himself said nothing. For the first time for many years his eyes were wet, and he had to pass his hand across them. Then he unloosed Heidi's arms, put her on his knee, and after looking at her for a moment, "So you have come back to me, Heidi? How is that? You don't look much of a grand lady. Did they send you away?" "Oh, no, grandfather," said Heidi eagerly. "You must not think that. They were all so kind, Clara and grandmamma and Mr. Seaserman. But you see, grandfather, I used to think I should die, for I felt as if I could not breathe. but I never said anything because it would have been ungrateful. And then, suddenly, one morning quite early, Mr. Seaman said to me, but I think it was partly the doctor's doing, but perhaps it's all in the letter. And Heidi jumped down and fetched the roll and a letter and handed them both to her grandfather.
"That belongs to you," he said, laying the roll of money down on the bench beside him. Then he opened the letter, read it through, and without a word put it in his pocket. "Do you think you can still drink milk with me, Heidi?" he asked, taking the child by the hand to go into the hut. "But bring your money with you. You can buy a bed and bedclothes and dresses for a couple of years with it." "I am sure I do not want it," replied Heidi. "I have got a bed already, and Clara has put such a lot of clothes in my trunk that I shall never want any more." "Take it and put it in the cupboard. You will want it some day, I have no doubt." Heidi obeyed and skipped happily after her grandfather into the house. She ran into all the corners, delighted to see everything again, and then went up the ladder. But there she came to a pause, and called down in a tone of surprise and distress, "Oh, grandfather, my bed's gone." "We can soon make it up again," he answered her from below. "I did not know that you were coming back. Come along now and have your milk." Heidi came down, sat herself on her high stool in the old place, and then taking up her bowl, drank her milk eagerly, as if she had never come across anything so delicious. And as she put down her bowl, she exclaimed, "Our milk tastes nicer than anything else in the world, grandfather."
A shrill whistle was heard outside. Heidi darted out like a flash of lightning. There were the goats, leaping and springing down the rocks, with Peter in their midst. When he caught sight of Heidi, he stood still with astonishment and gazed speechlessly at her. Heidi called out, "Good evening, Peter," and then ran in among the goats. "Little swan, little bear, do you know me again?" And the animals evidently recognized her voice at once, for they began rubbing their heads against her and bleating loudly as if for joy. And as she called the other goats by name, one after the other, they all came scampering towards her, helter-skelter and crowding round her. The impatient greenfinch sprang into the air and over two of her companions in order to get nearer, and even the shy little snowflake butted the great Turk out of her way in quite a determined manner, which left him standing, taken aback by her boldness, and lifting his beard in the air as much to say, "You see who I am." Heidi was all right and showing no signs of restlessness, and to feel that the hay he had stuffed into the round window was keeping the moon from shining too brightly upon her. But Heidi did not stir. She had no need now to wander about, for the great burning longing of her heart was satisfied. She was at home again on the mountain.